Alright guys, so here in a few days we're going to be showing you how we go about making this bow right here. Check it out guys. That is it right there. Yes sir. Get the side profile right there. That's what that looks like. I'm pretty hyped up about it. That's what that looks like guys. And it's supposed to be a miniature version of this one. Y'all see the resemblance there? Should look like that. And yeah, what do you guys think? Got my little boy one. Let's see if he approves. He says he needs to grow up a little bit more, but we're gonna go through and test him and see how it shoots. I haven't finished this bow. I don't even know what it pulls back at or nothing. But we're just gonna mess around and see how it does, I guess. So here we go, guys. That's how that little sucker shoots right there. You know, we might be able to get a little better penetration if we get a little closer. Let's see. Oh no, not quite, but you know, hey, you get the idea. It's a little kid's bow. Super hyped up about that. If y'all stay watching here in the next few days, I'll start posting the process of how we went about making this tiny little Osage bow with shark skin right there. Yes, sir. So this is an Osage stave, and we got the inspector here to look at it, and he says this is a pretty ugly stave. We got a lot going on right here. We're gonna have to work this down quite a bit, get rid of all this ugly stuff. And on the other end, well, we got a lot of like air checks and cracks and stuff like that, and so that ain't really ideal. This is probably not the ideal stave, but it's one that we got and it's dry, so we're gonna go with it. Right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus on taking down all this stuff on this side and that side and getting it all down to one growth ring, and we're gonna kind of show you a little bit of how I do that. All right, and so I'll use a draw knife for this process, and basically the goal is just bring all the ugly parts down until we hit one even growth ring. And once we get it, since this is the ugliest part, we're just going to follow that growth ring all the way down. And all there is to it is just look for knots. You see here, if you look right in there, there's a knot. You don't want to cut into your knot, so you're going to be super careful with that. I'm going to start right down here. And basically, there's another knot right here. Avoid your knots. You really want to be careful with those and do everything by hand. You know, I can kind of go through them. No, not necessarily through them. I can work pretty close up to them just because I have a little more experience. But if you're a first timer, I would say avoid those knots at all costs, and then go back with like a little razor blade knife and do it by hand. And we'll get to that later on. But yeah, so for right now, the goal is just bring down this stave to where we get rid of all this ugly stuff and down to one nice pretty ring, growth ring. Okay, so we got it a little bit cleaned up there, but I'm stopping there for a little bit just to show you what I mean about the growth rings. So if you look there, basically this is one growth ring, and if you'll look right here, you can see like that little yellow layer right there. This would be considered another growth ring, and if you follow this growth ring, it's going to go tuck right under this one, and then this right here is actually part of this other growth ring up here. This is part of this here. This is a top layer, and yeah, so for example, if you look here, well, you can kind of tell a little bit right here where the other growth ring was. And part of the reason why I was talking about earlier when I was like, don't gouge into your knots. So basically what happens is there's a little knot right here. If you gouge into this knot, I don't know if you can see, but we made like a little crevice in there. And by doing that, you basically interrupt one of the growth rings. And you can't do that, because if you do that, then when you go to draw the bow back, the sucker's gonna crack on you. Worst case scenario, explode on you. And so you don't want none of that. So that's why I was saying, if you have any knots, for example, we got 1 and 2, don't mess with those until the very end. Do those by hand, very thoroughly and carefully. So what I would do is I would take my blade and just work my way up to maybe right here and stop right here. and then maybe just work the stave up to right here, maybe an inch under the knot and an inch over the knot, and just stop and do the rest by hand if you're a first timer. Now if you've done this before and you got a little bit of experience, you know what you're doing, and work at your own pace. But if this is your very first time, be super careful with those knots. I'm going to show you a little bit. So right now we were just kind of cleaning up the stave a little bit, and we did that, and we still have, like, for example, all these little gouges in here, and then we got this one here. We still got a little bit more to go and scrape off, but I just want to take a moment to kind of explain that to you before I get too invested into it and forget to show you. But yeah, so basically the idea of the growth ring is to, let's see, you can see the growth rings there. Basically, if you look, you got like the dark and then the light colored growth rings going like that. Basically, you pick one ring, whichever one you want. If I remember correctly, the light colors are the softwood and the dark colors are the hardwood. I would say stick to the hardwood. So you're gonna want one of these thick colored, darker colored layers. Pick one, stick to it, and thoroughly work your way down, all the way down the stave with one same growth ring. And don't gouge into that growth ring, because if you do, then you messed it up and you got to start over, go with the next growth ring down, and go like that. All right, so you see how I got this little gouge right in here with this knot? And remember when I was saying don't go through your knots? I'm gonna go through one just to show you why you don't go through one. So we got this knot right here. I'm gonna go right through there. Okay, look there. You saw what happened? I gouged into there. That's why you don't go through knots, because that will cause your bow to crack and blow up on you. The only reason why I did that was just because we have all this going on that I'm trying to get rid of. I'm trying to get under all of this, so I could afford to go through that knot and still make up for it on the bottom layers. But normally you don't do that. You never go through a knot, because that's what happens when you go through a knot. And that's why you should avoid knots. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can really see this, but there's like tiny little pores in there. So all those little pores are part of the top ring, and that's a soft layer of wood. And for example, this here, you can kind of look here and see, it's a little hard to see, but it kind of slants this way. There's just like this lighter color right through here. This is the soft layer of one ring, and this darker color right through here is the hard layer. And when you take your draw knife, you can almost just hear and feel the difference of a soft layer and a hard layer. For example, look, when I'm rubbing on the hard layer, you can kind of hear what that sounds like, and you can't feel what it feels like, but it feels different. And then when I hit the soft layer, this is what it feels like and sounds like. Well, it's kind of hard to explain what it feels like and what it sounds like. But basically, the soft layer almost sounds like crunchy. Let's see, there's a little bit here, and see if you can hear it. Well, you can't really hear it, but the soft stuff almost has like a crunch to it. And the hard stuff almost just kind of slides and glides right over it. So your top layer, the back of your bow, you want the hard stuff. That's what you're looking for the back. But that's basically it. That's the concept of, oh, you kind of were able to hear the crunch there on that one a little. Let's see if we can get the crunch again. There towards the end, you were able to kind of hear it, but yeah, you can't really hear it, but you'll know what I'm talking about when you're doing it in person. And another tip is don't have your draw knife like that. I don't know if you can see that, but I have the bevel facing down. You don't want to do that. You really want the bevel curved up and the flat side facing up. This will kind of help you control what you're doing and take small increments. If you're a first timer, if you have a lot of experience with the draw knife, use it how you want to. It don't really matter. I use it this way, which I wouldn't recommend if you're a first timer. You're going to gouge into this wood really bad and really easily. But I've done this enough where I can kind of just have a feel for it. So this is one of those things where do as I say, not as I do. But yeah, that's the concept of how the draw knife works and how you find a ring and chase it. Yeah. Basically, you're gonna find you a ring that you like. Get one of the hardwood rings and try to follow it all the way down the back of the bow. So, if you can see here, there's like this little lighter layer of wood right here. This is a layer of one ring. This all here. That's all a layer. And then, so ideally we'd like to get rid of that. And the way that I like to get rid of that is I get me a nice sharp knife and just scrape away. Just lightly, you know. Because at this point we're pretty close to it. Now, if you do quite a few scrapes and they're still there, they're not really going anywhere, that might be because in the wood there's little grooves, you know, it goes up and down, and kind of like a little dimple in the wood per se. So maybe all this right here is just a little low spot that's slightly lower than everything else. So really I could keep scraping away until I get rid of this, but by doing that I may gouge into this other ring, because maybe this is high, this is high, this is low. So by scraping until I get this out, I might interfere with this side and this side of the ring, and I will then interfere with the growth ring. And the thing is, you don't want to mess with the growth ring. So if you look down, farther down, there's still a few spots like right here, right there, this one, this little one here, stuff like that, you know. So just leave them, you know, give them, you know, go through, give it a little bit of scrape, and then if you see like some of it's coming off, you know, give it a little bit more, but if not, let it be. So y'all remember how I told you to leave about an inch on this side of the knot and an inch on this side of the knot? Well, this side I went a little too far. That's a little less than an inch. I left maybe half an inch of wiggle room. But basically, this is our knot right here. And we took our draw knife and went all up here and all down here. And kind of left the knot for a razor blade knife. Get you a brand new blade on it. And all you're going to do is just carefully carve away all the extra rings, all the extra wood, until you get down to this same growth ring that I have here and here. We're going to get it all to match. And the way I like to do that is just ever so slightly, you know, here's your knot right here. So don't gouge into the knot, just go around the knot and just take little bits. Go slow, you know, there's no rush. And yeah, go really slow on this part. This part is what will really determine how the back of your bow is going to turn out. So take it real slow. Try not to gouge into this other ring. And that's how I go about doing that. Just take her slow, and now here's another thing. If you don't trust your, you know, per se your whittling skills, you could always just leave it that way. You know, I mean, maybe not that ugly, you know, carve away a little bit at the edges. Go through and just kind of do something like this, where you smoothen up the edges a little bit. And then just kind of like that, where you just smoothing up a little bit of the edge. And then you can take like a little sandpaper and just kind of lightly go around everything, just to kind of bring everything down, and just leave a little bulge there if you want to play it safe. I do that all the time. Just because, you know, sometimes I carve the knots down to just the knot, like I did these. I do that sometimes, or this one here. You know, in this case, I did
try to go through and carve out the entire knot. Well, you can still see a little bit of wood there, but I'm gonna go through with the sandpaper and slightly touch that up. But you know, if you're one of those guys that you like to be better safe than sorry, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just leaving extra material. The only thing that you can't do is gouge into the existing back. As long as you don't gouge into the growth ring that you're gonna keep, nothing else matters. But yeah, guys, that's how I go about doing the knots, and we'll pick up a little bit after that. So we went through and carved it out with the little razor blade, the best that we could. And now I'll just kind of touch it up with a sharp knife, and just kind of, I'll do a little bit of that. And careful not to gouge into that knot. And that's all there is to it. Just scrape away a little bit. You can go up, you can go down. Now you could also use a little bit of sandpaper. Whatever you're more comfortable with, and whatever you have handy, whatever is best for you. And really, that's about the best I feel like I'm gonna be able to do with the knife. So yeah, what I just did there, don't do that. Don't touch the knot. Basically, that's what that's gonna look like there. And then I'll go through with a little bit of sandpaper and just slightly round out the edges a tiny, tiny little bit. But really, I mean, that's good enough. But you know, just because this bow is maybe not for me, I want to make sure I go above and beyond. So I'm gonna take a little bit of sandpaper and just kind of round these out, just barely, ever so slightly, just to make it look pretty. And we'll pick up there. So there we have it. This is our stave. We got it all nice and cleaned up. Everything's looking good. But we're running into one problem, and that's this crack right here. There's a huge crack right here. This is probably, I'm guessing, like storm damage. Probably this tree was like knocked over by a storm or something. Or, you know, sometimes the wood just does all kinds of crazy stuff. Who knows? But point of the story is, this is going to mess us up because I cannot incorporate this crack into our bow. So we're going to check there, and that's not even an inch. I mean, that is like 10/16 basically. Give or take 9/10/16 at our thinnest point. So that means, and I mean, my limb tips are going to be up here somewhere. So I mean, that's you know, like a foot up. So the way I do my limbs is I usually go about an inch width, and then I taper down into half an inch on top. But because of this being here, I'm not gonna be able to keep them an inch wide. I'm gonna have to make this limb both limbs, to keep them uniform, they're gonna be about 10/16 wide. So this is gonna be a very, very narrow bow. So that's gonna be nice to see. This is gonna be the thinnest bow I've ever made, which could potentially become the fastest bow I ever make. Or it could just be a complete disaster. I guess I'll have to find out. But so basically, because of that, this is going to be very thin limbs. So normally what I would do is I get the stave all cleaned up, and then I'll find a center point somewhere in here, and then I'll go all the way to the bottom, find a center point down there, and almost just kind of throw like a chalk line from the center of one tip of the limb to the center of the bottom limb. I'll throw a chalk line and find the center that way. And then after I find the center, I'll really follow these, you know, the grain of the wood. So when I say grain, I'm talking about these. I don't know if you can see them in the video, but all these little lines, you can kind of, if you'll focus on them, they might show all those little lines, and basically you follow those little lines. So what I would do is I would, let's say our center point was right here, right? We threw the chalk line was marking right there, And normally a standard width for my limbs is about an inch. Inch is my sweet spot. So technically right there, that's actually like perfectly an inch. Let's just say it was more than an inch. What I would do is I'd mark, like, let's say right here was our inch, right in here, and then right here. Let's just say that this was an inch. And then I would follow the little lines all the way up. And then I'd follow these lines all the way up. And then sometimes they have like a little squiggle in them. And you follow the squiggle. And then this one should have the same exact squiggles. And, you just follow them. And for example, let's see if this right here, we got one squiggle right here. It's not major, but we do have somewhat of a squiggle right in here. So basically when you're following the lines, you're going to follow the grain. And if you take a close look at that, you can kind of see the squiggles when they swirl with the grain of the wood. So you basically just follow the grain. And that's how you mark out your bow. And then once you get to the ends, you will kind of cross over because you'll start tapering, and that's okay. But other than the tips, you don't really want to run off track. You really want to just pick a line and stick to it and run it all the way up, basically. So I went through and we started off on the bottom over here where this crack was. And we just followed, our grain all the way down. And for the most part, it's pretty straight. And then I had to work around this knot. So here's another little tip. Technically, this grain is really in a straight line. It would have been a straight shot. But because we got a knot there, you want to go around your knots. You never want to cut right up on your knot. So if we would have done a straight shot, we would have been about 1/8 away from this knot. And that's too close, to be to a knot. You don't want to be too close to your knot. So I went ahead and rounded out around the knot. Simply because it's going to cause trouble if you get too close to that knot. So we keep going on down. We got a slight squiggle here, still following the grain. And then thankfully this one goes right between two knots. This is the one we're keeping in there. So we were far enough away from it. Now we are going to get kind of close to this one, but this is part of the leftover wood, so that's not going to matter. Let me just keep on going up and then back to the same concept. If we would have done a straight line, this time we would have gone right through the knot, and that's a huge mistake. Don't ever go right through a knot. Your bow will crack, most definitely. So you definitely do not want to interfere with that knot. So in this case, we just kind of circled around it, gave it enough room to do its own thing. And then we keep going on up. And then we have a combination of 4 knots right here. But this is part of the wood that's not going to be staying. So we went right through there because they're not going to bother us one bit. And that's what it looks like once it's all traced out. Alright, so since we're wanting to remove all this right here, the way I go about doing that is I'll take my draw knife, and you probably, right now I got the kind of the bevel going down and the flat side against the wood. I got a little more experience. If you work with draw knives and wood a lot, you probably don't have to do this, but if you're a beginner, you want the flat side up and the bevel down. It's still gonna work. It's just going to take off little bits at a time. And the reason why I say you want to do this is just so that you can take your time and careful not to mess anything up. But if you got a little more experience, you can do it this way. This is going to take a whole lot more material out. So the reason why I say stay away from this if you're a beginner is just because you don't want to take too much material and screw it up. But if you're pretty familiar with wood and draw knives, and you do this kind of stuff a lot, you can have the flat side facing towards the wood and the bevel facing you. And even then, once I get pretty close to my line, I'll go ahead and switch the bevel down just so I don't screw nothing up. But yeah, that's how that goes there. And you can see now we're starting to get closer and closer to that little line. And yep, you're just gonna slowly work it in. Keep an eye on that line. And so that's kind of what it should be looking like. And we're starting to get pretty close. So I'm gonna just bring it all down to where I'm not on the line, but just barely over the line. And that'll be a good stopping point. Okay, so now we have our handle marked out, which is right in here. That's our handle. We're gonna have to focus on the thickness of the bow going this way. And I like to mark it right at 3/4. It usually doesn't end up being 3/4, but that just gives me kind of like a starting point. So what I'll do is I'll take this and I have it set at 3/4 of an inch. And basically what I'll do is I'll just, I'll put this on the edge of the bow, on the back of the bow, and then just start going down. And it's kind of hard trying to record and do this all with one hand, but basically I'm just gonna go kind of like that. This is not a very good example, but you can kind of see there what I'm doing. And basically I'll just keep doing it all the way down. And basically that I'll just go all the way down the limbs, and I'll pick up once we do that. But really all it'll do is just give us a reference points of we're gonna bring all this down to that line. So when you get to this part, when you're doing this part of it, you're gonna want to find somewhere to brace this stave down to at the bottom, and then you're gonna get some towels or something to put right in your hip and put pressure on it. You're gonna take a draw knife and just carve out what you got marked out. And a little piece of advice is right now, since we're at a peak, just start in the center. But once you get a little flat spot, what I recommend is go at an angle. Give it one go at an angle, and then give it another go at the opposite angle. So that you create a little peak once again, and then you go down the center. And then you start over. Go off to the side. And back over to the other side. And then in the center again. And you just keep repeating that over and over until you get to right there. And once you do that, once you get to that line, it should all look like this. There you go. It should look like that. And then a little bit of this curve, it's going to be hard to get to, so leave that for the end. You can do that with a little pocket knife and whittle it out, or you could even use a chisel if you're familiar with chisels. You could do that, and I'll show you how to do that later on once we get the other side looking like this side here. So we got to where the draw knife would, get most of it, but this is just kind of hard to keep on going with the draw knife. Not necessarily hard, but I feel like just with a pocket knife you can get a whole lot, more accurate on that curve. The chisel would work great too. I just too lazy to go get my chisel. But yeah, I will literally just whittle away and just keep on cutting until I get all the way down to like right there, and then I'll do the rest with the draw knife or just to wherever, depending on how comfortable you are with your draw knife. But you can just whittle away for quite a while, and then if you need to, take your little file or a rasp and just kind of touch it up and smooth it out and do the little touches on that curve, and then we'll pick up there. All right, so we went through and took our little razor blade knife and carved it out, and then took our file and filed it down just a tiny little bit, and that's the shape we got there now. And we're getting pretty close to that line we got marked. Now we're going to go ahead and address this. We're going to try to somehow blend that whole little thing into here, get it all blended in, and then we'll pick up after that. Okay, so we had ran into that problem with the limb down there where there was like a ripped out cavity in there, and then we're getting pretty close to our line here, and bam, we run into this. I mean, look at that. That is just crazy right there. I mean, look at that, guys. Man, that's just pitiful. This stave has been a real headache. So what we're gonna do is we're probably just gonna start carving into here and try to work that out of here, and then just curve back out this way. And we're gonna hope for the best and keep on going and see how that goes. All right, so we went through and got everything roughed out fairly good. And here earlier we were running into a lot of issues. I ended up violating this knot right here, so that is not something I'm proud of. Just to come to find out, there's a huge crack running all the way down this. Pretty much right down to here. So that's at least like a foot 4 inches of a huge crack. I'm gonna pour a bunch of super glue in there, the liquid one, and hope for the best. And I'm just, I don't know, hope that this knot doesn't give out on me. But I'm really hoping for a lot there. And so the next step is getting the string knocks carved out. And so what I did there was I came down an inch and just I'm gonna notch that out. And the way I go to do that is I grab a little handsaw and I'll just get her started right on the line and just take it easy. And then get her going. Then I stop there. And as far as for the string, the little cutouts for the string, you can give it whatever design you want. It doesn't matter. You can slant it. If I'm slanting it like that, I'll do like a 1/4 inch drop from this point to this point. I'll do a 1/4 inch drop and I'll go like that. But I'm actually a pretty big fan of just going straight. It's just so simple and it works. So that's the way I do mine. But you can do whatever you like. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Just start off easy, and you know, take your time on this, guys. Don't jack anything up. And just like that, we're pretty much there. This is just a little rough idea of what the knocks are going to look like. And then I'll take my little razor blade knife and I'll cut that out. I misplaced my knife. So I'm going to just take my knife and I'm going to cut that out right there where I have it marked on those ends. And that'll be all I'll do for now while I put a little temporary string while we start getting some tillering going on in there. So we were getting, you know, pretty close to where we needed to be as far as thickness. You can see the little Sharpie line right there. But I mean, this crack is just, it's horrendous. There's no working around that. So we were originally, the goal was to push 65 pounds out of this bow. And with that crack in there like that, it's just not gonna happen. So we're gonna end up making a kid's bow out of this. We're gonna bring it down to that crack. So this bow's gonna be pushing maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 pounds. We're gonna make a little kid's bow out of it is what we're gonna end up doing with the stave. And that's the way we're gonna do it. So we got the new, you know, the new line drawn out there. And we're basically gonna cut that sucker in half, and we got the other side to match it. And we're no longer gonna make, you know, 65-pound bow like originally planned. We're gonna go to kids bow, but basically every step I'm still showing you applies exactly the same for a big bow, so stay tuned. So we now got everything completely scraped down to the same width of that crack. And now we're ready for the tillering stage. So one thing to keep note of, if you look at this limb, well, if I can get the focus, it kind of curves in, almost giving us a little bit of like string follow type of thing. It curves in. And then this other limb, I don't know if you can see that, but it curves out. So it kind of has a little bit of recurve. So that's one thing you're gonna have to keep in mind when you're tillering. When you have a perfectly straight stave, it's not very hard to tiller, not very hard at all. I would actually recommend like a tillering gizmo. That'd be the easiest way, I feel like, when you have a perfectly straight stave. But in this case, the stave is nowhere near straight. It's all over the place. It's got all kinds of propeller twists and crazy looking staves. So in this case, your best bet is going to be just eyeballing it. Just kind of look at it and feel it and see what feels and looks right. You're not going to be able to use a tape measure. You're not going to be able to use a tillering gizmo. You can, but you're not going to get a good tiller. This is going to be strictly doing it by eye. So now we've took our draw knife and we've scraped down these limbs to be the same girth all the way through. And that's what it's looking like there. So now we're ready to start the tillering process. And so the way I go about that is I put a little piece of paracord, but you could use any kind of string that doesn't have too much stretch to it. Paracord does actually have some stretch to it, but you know, it's good enough. It works. And I just put the string on there loosely, just kind of like that. Pretty much just it's on there pretty loosely. And then I have my first little notches that I have carved out on the piece of wood are right at, I want to say 10 inches. And then I just move in increments of, I can't remember, I think it's 3 inches. And, you know, I work my way all the way to 24 inches right here. This is my 24-inch mark because I have a 24-inch draw. But in this case, since we're making a kid's bow, I made a little mark right there. We're just going to go, I don't even know what that is. It's probably going to be, give or take, 18 inches or so maybe. I figured that's enough for a kid. So that's where we're gonna go. And I'm not gonna be checking the draw weight on this because it's already super light. This is definitely light. I don't care what the draw weight turns out to be. So I'm not gonna be checking the draw weight. But if you were wanting to check the draw weight, I've posted a video previously showing how I go about checking the draw weight. And talking about draw weight, one thing you want to keep in mind is during the tilling process, you never want to pull this back more than your desired draw weight. And be very cautious of that. So let's say the goal was 50-pound draw, right? We want a 50-pound draw. If you're pulling this string and it gets to right here and it hits 50 pounds, stop. Just stop. Your only option is either, in this case, cut a notch right there and work it that way, or take a few scrapes off of this limb, take a few scrapes off of that limb, uniform. Always keeping things uniform until you can finally get over here comfortably without going past 50-pound draw. And then once you get there, you can go about finding out your stiff spots and stuff like that. And I'll get to that here shortly. Okay, so we're at our desired draw length right there. And now we're taking a look at our tiller here. So earlier I had mentioned, because of this this bow not being pretty straight, we're having to kind of just eyeball our tiller. We can't really use a gizmo or a tape measure or anything like that. So basically, right off the bat, this limb, if y'all remember, kind of curved in a little bit, and this limb curved out this way a little bit. So keeping that in mind, that this limb curves in and this limb curves out naturally, this limb is gonna look like it's not bending as much as this limb. Once we're all done, it's gonna look like this limb is bending way more than this limb, because this limb has natural reflex, this one has natural deflex. So keeping that in mind, for the most part right now, you can kind of tell this one's curving more than this one is. So we're pretty good. But what are we looking for? We're looking for a nice uniform bend, and we're not seeing that here. If you look pretty closely, we're bending a little bit too much right in here. And then this is just kind of a straight shot that way. We're not having a nice uniform bend all the way through. So I'm thinking maybe right in here somewhere. Right in here. And I marked my belly right here with my pencil. I'm thinking all of this can kind of lose a little bit of material. And then this bottom half, I feel like is bending more than the rest. So we want to take off a little bit of material off of there in order to keep it all bending uniform. Because you can see right here, right in here, this is doing most of the bending here. I mean, everything's bending, but right in there, that's where most of the bending's happening. And then this limb actually has it's a little bit better, but kind of the same scenario. Right in here, it's doing most of the work. So this really kind of needs almost the same thing. On this top half, I need to remove a little bit of material. And so when you got a wonky stave like that, you're not really going to be able to use a gizmo or a tape measure. You're going to have to mostly just eyeball it. So when I'm taking scrapes off, well, when you take a few off the top half, what I'll do is I'll have the flat side of the draw knife facing me, the bevel facing away from me, and I draw a little X. And then I draw a little squiggles where I need to remove material from. And basically what that X represents is I don't need to go past that X. I stay on this side of the X. And the way I'll do that is I'll just go 1, 2, 3. And I mean, you can see right here, this is all the material I'm taking, just tiny little bits, just, you know, a little bit at a time. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then, you know, you can take 5 scrapes, 10 scrapes, 15, 30, 40, depending on how bad of a stiff spot you have. For example, mine wasn't terrible, so I'm going to take 10 scrapes and call it good. And then what I like to do after I'm done taking the scrapes, I'll go one scrape all the way down just to kind of even out the little indentation that I made while only scraping off of that little bit. So I'll go 1 down just to even it out and call it good. And that's all it is. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll put it back on the little tillering stick or whatever you want to call that. And I'll look at it again. If I need to take more, I'll come back and take a little more. Or, you know, we'll just go back and forth, repeating that process over and over until you get the perfect tiller. There we have it. I'd say our tiller is now looking good. Everything's looking uniform, bending uniform. The only problem we're running into now is this little crack wanting to come back. I poured a little bit of super glue in there and hoping that it won't bother us too much. And the next step will be, you know, since it's a kid's bow and it's already really, really light, I have no idea what it's pulling. I'm guessing, you know, 10 pounds or something like that, super light stuff. So I'm probably going to do some recurves on here just to try to bump the weight up a little bit and see if that'll help. After all, it's kid's bow, so I'm not expecting too much out of it, but I'd like a little more than 10 pounds. That's not very much at all, really. Okay, so we got the water going. It's boiling pretty good, and I'll put a little bit of painter's tape under and on top, just so that when I set the lid on top, just in case the lid gets like really hot, it doesn't, you know, kind of burn the wood, which it really shouldn't, but it's just a little precaution that I take. And yeah, so basically just make sure that the back of the bow is facing up and the belly of the bow is facing the water, and then I'll just set that lid on there just like that, and that's all there is to it. Just like that. And I'll let it sit there for 20 minutes just because these limbs are kind of small. If you ever do your bow, you probably expect to leave it there for like 30-40 minutes, but I'm doing 20 minutes on mine, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do the steam band. Alright guys, so it's right off the pot or whatever, and the key to this is move quick. Well, move quick, but also keep a close eye on everything, making sure that you're not developing any splinters. So I guess move slow but quick. Just keep an eye out on everything, making sure you're not developing any splinters, and just, you know, ease her on down, keep an eye on everything. Once you get to your desired finish, tie it off, and now got it tied off. That's all there is to it. I have it tied off in my form. That's the curve it's going to take. And now I let it sit there for 15 minutes.
I mean, you can let it sit there as long as you want. If you let it sit longer, then it won't hurt nothing. But within 15 minutes, it's dry to the touch, and I'd say within 20 minutes, you can keep on tillering if you need to. I already went ahead and tillered it all, so it should be basically, pretty much good to go. But it won't hurt to put it back on the little tiller thing and check everything. Double check everything. Double check and never hurt nobody. So, yeah, that's all there is to it. That's how I do my steam bending, and that's how we get our recurve in the bows. All right, so now we got all the hard stuff out of the way, and earlier we had that crack developing over here. So we went ahead and put a whole bunch of super glue. It's had enough time to dry now, and we're just gonna go through and take our orbital sander and just sand everything down, smooth it down. We're not doing anything to the to the handle yet, simply because I like to shoot it one way and then flip it over and shoot another way, and shoot it a handful of times and see which way the bow likes to shoot best, and then I'll go back and carve the handle in there. So right now we just kind of left it, per se neutral, so it can go either way. But we're just gonna go through with the orbital sander and get everything sanded down, and all it is just go through and sand down everything. And careful when you're sanding down the limbs here. Even strokes. Don't stay in one spot for too long, because you will mess up the tiller on this, and you don't want to mess up the tiller. So even strokes. And yeah, and then as far as the handle, well, sand away as much as you want until you get what you want. You can go real smooth, real fine, or you can go rough, whatever you desire. And I'm gonna go through and sand all these down, and we'll pick up there. All right, so there we have it. That's the bow all completed and everything, all sanded down, and I haven't even got around to shooting it or nothing. Now that I think about it, I probably won't even do nothing to the handle. I'll just let it be. I'll put like a little leather strap and just shoot off the hand or something like that. And we put a little bit of a cindy patch right there where we had violated that one knot earlier in the process. Ideally, whenever you're getting to your bow, you won't have a stave that's all crazy like this one, and you don't have to be doing all that crazy stuff. But that's kind of what it would look like there, all strung up. This is the piece of paracord. So, but yeah, that's kind of what it would look like there. And I think it'll shoot best this way, but I don't know. This is probably like a 10-pound draw or something super light, but that's what it shoots like there, guys. And we'll run it back. We'll twist it over and shoot off the other side and see if the other side shoots any better. That side actually shot a little better. So probably that little sinew patch is probably going to be our top limb. But now that I think about it, I mean, it's a nice, cool looking little bow, but if this is going to be a kid's bow, this is way too big. So I'm probably going to end up maybe chopping the limbs about halfway somewhere or something like that. Because I didn't really think about this, but this is a full-size bow. There's definitely no way a little kid is going to be, I mean, unless they're shooting sideways, but yeah, I didn't even think about that until now. Just now I started thinking about that. So we'll probably chop off the limbs, but there you have it, guys. That's kind of what it's going to look like. There. We're going to go through and test them and see how it shoots. I haven't finished this bow. I don't even know what it pulls back at or nothing, but we're just gonna mess around and see how it does, I guess. So here we have it, guys. That's how that little sucker shoots right there. We might be able to get a little better penetration if we get a little closer. Let's see. Oh, no, not quite, but hey, you get the idea. It's a little kid's bow. Super hyped up about that.